pro tip, when you're touching any of the part where your fingertips come in contact with the gel, you want to make sure you don't touch it in a corner, that you actually touch it somewhere like right in here. All right, the first thing I want to do is just hold it by the edges, line it up. And when I think I'm ready for part of it to adhere, I let one part touch, then this way I can kind of let go and I can make sure that I like the way it's aligned and that it's lined up. When I'm ready to install, now I simply start pressing out air bubbles. I'm going to get eye level to the door handle. Once I feel like I have it lined up, I'm going to let part of it touch. This is going to allow this part of the panel to be held in place, while now I try to figure out if I have the hinges lined up right. So I'm going to adjust the hinges ever so slightly, and again, I'm going to let part of it touch. Okay, now I have this panel held here and here. I'm going to grab my microfiber cloth, nice clean cloth, and right here where I installed it, I'm actually going to start rubbing this down because I am happy with how it's lined up around the hinges. Okay, I'm not going to press the top just yet because on this particular vehicle, it's straight here and then it has a curve. So I'm going to be really gentle around going around the curve so I don't create a like a pocket of air in the material. So this part, leave alone until you have this part properly bonded. Okay, I'm going to peel this back, and again, I'm going to not touch edge it like the corner. I'm going to touch some big surface area with my fingers, and I'm going to pull this back. The secret to removing these panels is pulling perpendicular to the vehicle, not pulling into itself. Okay, so when I pull away from the vehicle, now this panel, I've barely installed it, so it hasn't had its full time to cure and bond. Typically, the armor takes about 24 to 48 hours to fully make the connection with the vehicle, and then it's considered as strong of a hold as it's going to have. But I'll show you after how you can remove it with that. Okay, so and anywhere around cutouts, I'm very delicate to peel this back. Okay, so I might have to actually start peeling here, just not to put too much force on here and potentially stretch or tear this part of the panel. Okay, so now I have fully pulled back the panel to the part where I started rubbing. I can tell that I don't have any more air bubbles or any parts in there, and all of this is well bonded. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pressing in a fanning up and down motion to get air bubbles out while I hold this part away from the vehicle. And so as I make my way fanning the panel, I'm going to allow more and more of it to make contact with the vehicle while I rub out any of the air bubbles. Okay, so here's what I mean. Okay. Okay, so now I have the main part nicely connected. Now I'm going to do the top. Okay, so the ideal situation is you've got a helper to help you with some of these big panels. But if you don't, the exact same method that I mentioned earlier about letting part of it touch applies, and I'll show you exactly how. I'm going to line up this part here. Okay, let that touch. Let this touch. Now the key to installing the truck bed panel, it needs to go high up on here. And you'll see that as you get closer to the back. As I hold this out, I'm going to start pressing the armor panel down and pressing out the air bubbles. So through the power of video editing, it has now been 24 hours since I installed this side. I'm going to show you the technique for removing the panels, and I'm going to start with the front door because this is usually the one that gives everyone the most hassle. Okay, so let's get started. So number one, clean hands. Okay, now I'm going to start with this side here, and I'm going to get a finger underneath the gel. Do not snag by the edges, okay? And I'm not going to touch any of the corners. I'm going to try to touch inside the material, okay? So we're going to pull back piece by piece. Okay, so now I've got 3 sections off. I'm going to gently pull them until they're roughly even. Just being really careful not to stretch any of the curves. Now, I've got a straight line like I was saying. So I'm going to start pulling straight back. Now, all I'm doing is just putting my body weight backwards while I have a good hold on the panel. As you can see, it is coming off. It does take a little bit of force, but like I said, I'm not going to pull it this way. I'm definitely not going to use my tire as a kickoff point. All I'm going to do is straight line, perpendicular to the vehicle, and I'm just going to lean back. Okay, now I'm going to slow down. As I get to the end piece, where I have smaller cut areas, weaker parts of the material, I want to make sure that I'm pulling back really delicately, and I'm not going to stretch any of these areas that have cutouts. Okay? And voila. If you have any other questions or need any information at all, please don't hesitate to reach out at mekmagnet.com. Thank you for watching.